the alien princess entered the battlefield alone and turned the tide. Soldiers from both sides had dug in, their faces etched with exhaustion and fear, and the air was thick with smoke that stung their eyes. For weeks, the war had raged across the planets of the Outer Rim, leaving cities in ruin and landscapes scarred. Morale had been low for the human-led forces. Supplies were dwindling, and the enemy, a technologically advanced alien faction, seemed unstoppable. Commander Alara crouched behind a crumbling wall, scanning the battlefield with a pair of binoculars. Her unit had barely survived the morning assault, and casualties had mounted higher than anyone dared to count. Even the bravest soldiers were beginning to whisper of surrender. "Alara," a young soldier murmured, his voice trembling, "we can't hold them much longer." They're everywhere. If the reinforcements don't arrive soon, we'll—" "They won't," Alara interrupted firmly, gripping his shoulder. "The reinforcements are delayed, it's just us, but giving up is not an option, not today." She tried to keep her voice steady, but even she could feel the weight of hopelessness pressing down on her. The enemy lines were advancing steadily, and the human forces were stretched thin. Just as she turned to rally her squad, a distant shimmer caught her eye. From the horizon, a figure emerged. At first, it looked like a glint of sunlight on armor, but as it drew closer, the shape became unmistakable. She gasped softly. It was Princess Alara. The alien princess whose very name was whispered in both fear and admiration across galaxies. She was said to possess abilities beyond imagination, unmatched in combat skill and strategy, and yet her people had long been divided about sending her into battle. Many believed it too risky, too dangerous, and yet here she was, alone, stepping onto the battlefield without an army, without a single escort. The soldiers froze, unsure if they were witnessing an angel of hope or a herald of doom. Alara's presence was commanding. Her armor shimmered like polished starlight, and her long silver hair flowed freely behind her as if propelled by the wind itself. She carried no massive weapons, no heavy artillery, only a slender, elegant blade at her side, glowing faintly with a mysterious energy. Her eyes, sharp and determined, swept across the battlefield with an intensity that seemed to see not just the surface, but through the chaos to the very hearts of every soldier present. "Princess," Commander Alara whispered, more to herself than anyone else. She couldn't believe it. She had read the reports, heard the rumors, but seeing Alara in person was different. It was as if hope itself had materialized into flesh and armor, walking towards them. Alara lifted her hand, not in command, but in recognition of the soldiers who had held their ground this long. She did not shout orders, did not demand their attention. Her calm confidence radiated across the field, touching each soldier like a gentle wind, easing the tension, reminding them of why they fought in the first place. And then she moved. With a grace that was almost otherworldly, Alara stepped forward alone. The enemy noticed too. Their advance faltered, their formations wavering. They had not expected her, not in the front lines, not like this. Whispers ran through their ranks. The princess was here, alone. Alara's unit gathered courage, inspired not by orders but by the sheer presence of this extraordinary figure. Slowly, almost instinctively, they rose from cover and began to support her advance. Others followed. Soldiers who had been ready to retreat found themselves running forward, determination rekindled. Alara didn't charge blindly. Every step she took was deliberate, every movement measured. She seemed to predict the enemy's next moves, countering them before they could strike. Her blade moved in arcs of light, deflecting incoming attacks, disarming opponents and creating paths for her allies to advance. "Look at her," one soldier shouted awestruck. She's unstoppable." It was more than skill. It was presence, strategy, and an unshakable confidence that gave every human soldier strength they had thought lost. Slowly, the tide began to shift. Where despair had reigned moments ago, determination now burned. The alien princess did not fight recklessly. She fought with intelligence, guiding the human forces around the battlefield, signaling silent maneuvers, and creating opportunities where before there had been none. Every movement she made seemed to pull the scattered soldiers together, forming a new line, a new hope. And then, as she reached the center of the battlefield, a wave of energy pulsed from her blade. It was not destructive in the usual sense. It was light, a radiant force that seemed to energize those around her, making them stronger, faster, braver. The enemy, once confident in their overwhelming numbers, now hesitated. Elara, watching closely, realized that this was no ordinary combat. Elara was more than a warrior. She was a symbol, a living beacon of courage. Soldiers who had been on the brink of collapse found themselves moving with renewed skill and determination. Weapons fired more accurately, shields held stronger, and morale soared in a way that reports could never capture. By the time Elara paused, near the center of the battlefield, the human forces had regained significant ground. Where they had been pushed back for weeks, now they had reclaimed lost positions. Small squads that had been isolated now regrouped, guided by her subtle gestures. The enemy was disoriented. Their superior technology could not compensate for the sudden, unstoppable morale surge among the humans. Confusion rippled through their ranks as they faced a human army led not by numbers or weapons, but by the inspiration of a single alien princess who walked alone. Elara felt a surge of pride and relief, but she also understood the challenge was far from over. The battle had only just begun, and Elara's intervention had bought them time, but the enemy would adapt. Yet, seeing the hope she had ignited, seeing the courage rekindled in every soldier, Elara knew one thing for certain: humanity had a chance. And standing there at the very heart of chaos, Princess Elara had shown them the first step of that chance, a step that could change everything. The morning haze had begun to lift, revealing the true scale of the battlefield. Scorched earth stretched in every direction, littered with the remnants of machinery and broken weapons. The humans had regained some ground thanks to Princess Elara's extraordinary intervention, but the enemy had not yet surrendered. They were regrouping, adjusting their strategy, and preparing to launch another wave of attacks. Commander Elara moved through the ranks, her mind racing. The soldiers were exhausted, their clothes torn and faces smeared with dirt and sweat. Yet a spark lingered in their eyes, a spark that had been missing before Elara arrived. Every glance they gave the princess reflected awe and determination. "She is unlike anything I've ever seen," whispered one of the younger soldiers, gripping his rifle tightly. "It's like she carries the strength of all of us in her presence." Elara nodded, but there was little time for admiration. Orders needed to be given, plans adjusted, and reinforcements coordinated. She approached the communications officer, who was frantically relaying messages back to the base. "Status," Elara demanded. "They're calling for backup," the officer replied, eyes wide. "But the delay, it will take hours. We're on our own for now." Elara's jaw tightened. That meant the humans had to hold their ground, and for that they would need more than courage. They would need every advantage Princess Elara could provide. The princess herself had not paused. She moved like a ghost through the battlefield, her presence alone forcing the enemy to hesitate. Wherever she walked, her subtle commands, gestures, shifts in stance, even the direction of her gaze, rallied the human forces. Soldiers who had been pinned down found themselves advancing. Small groups of humans who had been scattered across the terrain reorganized under her silent guidance. Elara approached a cluster of human snipers perched atop a ruined outpost. She did not speak. Instead, she demonstrated, pointing toward a ridge where enemy reinforcements were gathering. With a few precise signals, she coordinated their fire. Bullets soared with accuracy, striking enemy machinery and forcing them to retreat. The soldiers were stunned, not just by her skill, but by her ability to see the battlefield with perfect clarity. Meanwhile, the enemy began to adapt. Their leaders were not accustomed to facing an opponent who was not only formidable, but inspired unwavering loyalty and courage in the humans. They sent elite units to flank Elara, hoping to capture or eliminate her, believing that if they removed the princess, the humans would collapse again. But Elara was always one step ahead. She moved with agility, dodging attacks, leading the enemy into traps and ambushes she had identified from her careful observations. Her slender blade flashed through the air, deflecting strikes with precise timing. She did not aim to kill indiscriminately. She focused on disarming and neutralizing threats, keeping the conflict intense but controlled. Elara observed in awe as Elara executed a maneuver that no human had dared attempt. With a swift leap across a narrow ravine, the princess landed in the center of the enemy's formation, creating confusion. She gestured with her hand, and human units moved to encircle the disoriented foes. The battlefield erupted with coordinated movement that only a mind as brilliant as Elara's could orchestrate. The soldiers' morale soared. They had seen heroes in legends, but none of them had imagined witnessing one in real life. And yet here she was, guiding them, inspiring them, proving that courage and intelligence could overcome even the deadliest adversaries. Amidst the chaos, a young soldier named Kai found himself separated from his unit, trapped behind debris as enemy forces advanced. His heart pounded with fear, but then he saw her, Elara, moving toward him, unhesitant. She extended her hand, and Kai felt a wave of reassurance wash over him. With a quick gesture, she guided him to safety, her presence alone warding off the enemies approaching his position. Kai could not believe it. Not only was she fighting the enemy, but she was saving humans, one by one, ensuring no one was left behind. Each action was calculated, every move deliberate, and yet there was a warmth in her attention that made the soldiers feel seen and valued, even amidst the horrors of war. On the enemy's side, tension was rising. Their usual strategies, honed over centuries, were failing. The humans, once on the verge of collapse, were now advancing with precision and coordination. Every time an enemy attempted a counterattack, Elara anticipated it, guiding humans to intercept and neutralize threats. It was as if she had a vision of the battlefield that no one else could comprehend. Elara, watching from a distance, realized the significance of what was happening. Humanity had been underestimated by countless civilizations across the galaxy, dismissed as primitive and weak. Yet here they were, standing taller than ever, led not by fear or orders but by inspiration. And it was Elara who had unlocked that potential, showing them that courage and unity could turn the tide. The princess paused briefly to assess the battlefield. Her eyes, sharp and calculating, scanned every movement. Enemy formations were wavering, human lines were strengthening, and hope was spreading like wildfire across the ranks. Elara raised her blade, and a soft hum of energy radiated outward. It was not destructive in the way of weapons, but it seemed to empower the humans, enhancing their reflexes, focus, and stamina. Elara saw it firsthand. Soldiers who had been exhausted now moved with renewed energy. Their teamwork improved, their accuracy increased, and their confidence surged. Even the wounded found the strength to rise and fight. The enemy's response was frantic. They deployed more advanced machines, hoping sheer firepower would overwhelm the humans. Explosions rocked the ground, and smoke rose in thick clouds. But Elara remained undeterred. She adjusted her strategy in real time, guiding humans to positions that maximized their effectiveness while minimizing risk. Every move was a masterstroke of strategy and foresight. At one point, a massive enemy walker, a towering machine bristling with weapons, advanced toward a group of human soldiers. Panic threatened to take hold, but Elara acted quickly. With a series of precise gestures, she coordinated a small squad to flank the machine, while the others created diversions. Her plan worked flawlessly. The walker was disabled without a single human life lost. The soldiers erupted in cheers, their spirits soaring higher than ever. In the midst of the chaos, Elara paused again to acknowledge the humans who had been fighting tirelessly. She moved among them, offering encouragement and subtle guidance, making sure every soldier felt their contribution mattered. She did not seek recognition or glory. Her focus was solely on ensuring victory through unity and courage. Elara realized that the princess's impact went beyond the battlefield. She had awakened something within the humans, a belief in themselves that no amount of fear or adversity could shake. The enemy, no matter how technologically superior, could not match the power of a united force inspired by hope and leadership. As the sun climbed higher, casting light over the battlefield, the momentum continued to shift. Enemy forces were now retreating in scattered groups, unable to regroup or coordinate effectively. The humans, guided by Elara's brilliance, advanced steadily, reclaiming lost positions and pushing the invaders back. Even from a distance, the effect was unmistakable. Elara's presence alone had changed everything. Where despair had reigned moments ago, now there was hope. Where defeat had seemed inevitable, victory now appeared within reach. And all it had taken was one figure walking onto the battlefield alone, carrying courage, strategy, and unwavering determination. Elara felt a deep sense of pride. Humanity had been tested, and in the face of overwhelming odds, they had risen to the occasion. They were not alone, not really. With Elara at their side, even if she was technically not on their side in terms of allegiance, they had found a leader, a guide, and a symbol of what they could achieve when fear was replaced with courage. The enemy would regroup, that was certain. They would adapt, sending more forces and devising new tactics. But Elara had given humanity something far more valuable than a temporary advantage. She had reminded them of their own strength, their own potential, and the power of unity. And as the princess paused, surveying the battlefield with her calm, steady gaze, the humans understood one thing clearly. The tide had truly turned and the war was far from over. But now, they had a chance. The sun was dipping low in the sky, casting long shadows across the battlefield, turning the scorched earth into a patchwork of light and darkness. The human forces, once battered and demoralized, were now moving with purpose. Thanks to Princess Elara's leadership, they had reclaimed much of the ground they had lost, but the enemy was still formidable. The alien soldiers, stubborn and highly disciplined, were regrouping for a decisive counterattack. Commander Elara stood on a ridge, scanning the horizon. She could see clusters of enemy reinforcements moving in formation, their advanced technology glinting in the last rays of sunlight. The humans around her were tense but ready. They had regained confidence, but this was far from over. They needed another spark, and Elara knew who could provide it. Elara stood in the middle of the reclaimed battlefield, her presence commanding and serene. Her silver hair shimmered in the light, and the hum of energy from her blade created a subtle force that seemed to ripple through the humans nearby. She did not shout orders or demand attention. She merely moved with intent, and the soldiers instinctively followed her guidance. "Hold the line here," she gestured to a small unit positioned near a ruined communication tower. "Flank them on the ridge. Cover the left side, Kai, and make sure no one sneaks behind us." Kai, the young soldier she had saved earlier, nodded, his confidence renewed by her calm authority. He relayed the instructions, and the small unit moved swiftly into position. Other squads mirrored her actions, as if they could read her mind, anticipating her next move before she even indicated it. From the enemy lines, a low hum signaled the approach of more advanced alien machines. Towering walkers, bristling with energy cannons and defensive shields, advanced steadily, their heavy footsteps shaking the ground. The human forces tensed, knowing that a frontal clash with such machines could be catastrophic. but Elara did not falter. Her eyes scanned the machines, calculating angles, distances, and weaknesses. With precise gestures, she directed the humans to converge on narrow paths between the walkers. Small squads fired at the joints of the machines, targeting sensors and weak spots. Some soldiers were initially hesitant, but Elara moved alongside them, her calm presence banishing fear. Where one soldier hesitated, she was there to guide and protect, ensuring they moved with courage and precision. As the first walker faltered under coordinated fire, the human forces surged forward. Elara leaped onto a ridge, her blade glowing softly. She made a swift, sweeping motion that emitted a wave of energy. The wave did not destroy but created a shield of force around the humans nearby, protecting them from the walkers' energy blasts. It was a demonstration of power, but also of restraint. She used it to empower her allies, not to annihilate the enemy. The humans moved with renewed energy, and the enemy forces began to falter. Confusion rippled through their ranks as their advanced technology failed to compensate for the humans' coordination and morale. It was not just strategy, it was spirit. They had underestimated the power of a united force inspired by hope, and Elara had become the catalyst for that transformation. Kai found himself alongside a group of infantry advancing through a narrow valley. The terrain was dangerous, with jagged rocks and debris from collapsed structures. Enemy snipers had lined the cliffs, and energy beams streaked across the valley. Kai's hands shook, but he could feel the pulse of energy from Elara's blade, guiding him, steadying him, giving him the courage to move forward. "Keep your focus," she called softly from a ridge above, her voice carrying without shouting. "You can do this. Trust yourselves, trust each other." With every step, Kai felt his fear melt away. He moved with precision, covering his comrades and taking careful aim at the enemy positions. The snipers fell back as humans advanced, coordinated and efficient. It was as if Elara's presence had unlocked a strength they didn't know they possessed. On another part of the battlefield, a group of human engineers worked quickly to repair damaged defensive turrets. Normally, they would have been targeted and destroyed by the enemy, but Elara's subtle guidance had positioned them safely. As the turrets came back online, they rained precise fire on enemy positions, further tipping the balance. Elara watched from her vantage point. She could see the transformation happening before her eyes. The humans who had been exhausted and fearful were now confident, moving with coordination and purpose. Elara had done more than fight. She had inspired them, elevated them, reminded them that they were capable of far more than they had ever believed. The enemy tried to mount a concentrated attack on the human center. A massive alien commander, adorned in heavy armor and commanding a squad of elite soldiers, advanced with a roar that echoed across the battlefield. Many humans faltered, unsure if they could withstand such force. But Elara met the commander head-on, her blade flashing with a quiet, unwavering energy. She did not strike recklessly. Every movement was precise, calculated to disarm or redirect rather than harm unnecessarily. She dodged attacks effortlessly, guiding the humans around her, creating openings in the enemy line. Soldiers saw her actions and mirrored them, inspired by her courage and control. The commander tried to adapt, sending waves of elite soldiers to overwhelm her. Yet Elara anticipated each move, using the terrain, the humans' positioning, and her own skill to outmaneuver them. Every attempt to corner her failed, and every success she achieved empowered the humans to fight harder. A young medic, tending to wounded soldiers near the front, looked up in astonishment. Elara had moved so close to the enemy that it seemed impossible she would survive, yet she emerged unscathed, guiding the humans in their advance. The medic realized something profound. Courage could inspire courage. Leadership could ignite unity, and Elara embodied both. As the sun set, casting the battlefield in hues of gold and crimson. The human forces advanced steadily. The enemy retreated in scattered groups, unable to maintain formation or morale. They had underestimated the humans, underestimated the strength that could be awakened by inspiration and courage. Elara moved through the ranks, helping soldiers regroup and reinforcing the lines. She caught glimpses of Elara, moving from group to group, subtly guiding, protecting, and inspiring. Even the most hardened soldiers who had seen countless battles could not deny the extraordinary impact the princess had made. By nightfall, the humans had reclaimed nearly all of their lost positions. Fires from the day's battle dotted the landscape, but the soldiers stood tall, their spirits unbroken. Elara, standing at the center of the battlefield, looked over her allies. There was no arrogance in her gaze, no desire for recognition, only calm determination and a quiet pride in what had been achieved together. Kai, exhausted but exhilarated, approached her. "Princess, thank you. We wouldn't have made it without you." Elara smiled faintly, a gesture that seemed to lighten the weight of the world. "It was never about me," she said. "It was about what you could do when you believed in yourselves. Remember that, always." The soldiers gathered around her, not out of fear or command, but out of respect and admiration. They had witnessed something extraordinary, something that would be remembered across generations. A single figure, walking alone into the heart of chaos, could awaken the courage and strength of an entire army. Elara stood nearby, reflecting on the day's events. Humanity had been tested, pushed to the edge, and yet they had prevailed, not through brute force alone, but through unity, intelligence, and inspiration. Princess Elara had turned the tide of battle, and in doing so, she had shown humanity what they were truly capable of. Even as night fell and the battlefield quieted, a sense of purpose lingered in the air. The humans had learned that courage was contagious, that leadership could take many forms, and that hope was a weapon more powerful than any cannon. And standing there under the stars, Elara looked toward the horizon. The war was far from over, but for the first time, the humans knew they had a chance to win. They had been given more than a victory. They had been given belief in themselves, and that was something no enemy could ever take away. The night air was still, except for the distant hum of enemy machinery retreating into the darkness. Fires from the day's battle painted the scorched battlefield in flickering reds and golds, casting long shadows over soldiers who were finally able to breathe. Exhaustion weighed heavily on everyone, yet there was also a sense of exhilaration, a feeling of accomplishment that had seemed impossible just hours earlier. Princess Elara moved through the ranks with quiet purpose, checking on the soldiers, ensuring the wounded were being attended to, and offering a word of encouragement wherever it was needed. Her silver hair glimmered under the moonlight, and her calm presence had a magnetic effect on everyone nearby. Commander Elara followed closely, her mind still racing with the day's events. The humans had won this engagement, but the war was far from over. Yet tonight, they had a reason to believe that victory was possible. She watched as Elara knelt beside a young recruit who had taken a minor injury during the final push. The princess's hand hovered just above his shoulder, and he seemed to draw strength simply from her presence. "You fought well," Elara said softly, her voice carrying a gentle authority. "Not because I led you, but because you chose to fight for each other. Remember that feeling. It is stronger than fear, stronger than doubt." The young recruit's eyes widened with understanding. He nodded, a smile breaking through the grime and sweat on his face. Around them, other soldiers began to gather in small groups, talking quietly among themselves, sharing stories of courage and teamwork. For the first time in weeks, they felt connected not just to the mission, but to each other. Elara moved toward the princess, her steps careful, respectful. "Princess, I don't know how to thank you," she said. "Without you, we would have been overrun. You didn't just fight, you inspired us." Elara shook her head, her gaze calm and unwavering. Inspiration is not given, Commander. It is discovered. I merely helped you see what was already inside you. Humanity is stronger than you realize. Today, you proved it to yourselves." As they spoke, a scout approached with urgent news. "Commander, Princess, we've intercepted enemy transmissions. They're calling for reinforcements, larger, more organized forces. They've realized the humans are not as weak as they thought." Ilara's brow furrowed. "How long before they arrive?" "Several hours at least." "Enough time for us to regroup, but not enough to rest fully." Ilara's eyes narrowed, not in fear but in determination. "Then we prepare. We strengthen our lines, coordinate positions, and ensure every soldier knows their role. The next attack will test us, but we are ready. Tonight you learn to believe. Tomorrow you will prove it." She walked to the center of the battlefield, standing on a small rise. Soldiers instinctively formed a semicircle around her, drawn not by orders but by respect and trust. Ilara raised her hand, not for attention but as a gesture of focus. A subtle wave of energy pulsed from her blade, not destructive, but invigorating. Each soldier felt a surge of confidence and clarity, as if the battlefield itself had become more navigable, more manageable. "Remember," she said, her voice carrying across the ranks, "it is not the enemy's strength that defines us but our courage. Together we are unstoppable. Together we can face anything." The soldiers cheered, a sound that echoed across the scarred plains. Their voices, unified and strong, were a testament to the transformation Ilara had brought. Where fear and doubt had reigned, now there was courage and resolve. As the night deepened, small squads began to patrol the perimeter, ensuring no enemy forces could approach unnoticed. Engineers repaired defensive structures and recalibrated energy barriers. Medics tended to the wounded, now confident that help and protection were near. Every human soldier moved with purpose, driven not by blind obedience, but by belief in themselves and their newfound unity. Ilara moved among them, offering advice and quiet guidance. She helped coordinate fire positions, suggested strategies for vulnerable points, and ensured communication lines were secure. Her presence was not just inspiring, it was practical, enhancing the efficiency and effectiveness of every human action. Kai approached her again, carrying a small data tablet with reports from the day. "Princess, look at this," he said, showing her the stats. "We've managed to hold ground, reclaim positions, and the enemy has suffered more losses than we could have imagined." Ilara studied the reports briefly. Numbers are important, but they do not tell the full story. What matters is what we have built, the courage, the unity, and the belief in ourselves. Those cannot be measured in data sheets, but they will carry you through every battle to come. The princess turned toward the horizon, where faint lights indicated the distant approach of reinforcements. She did not flinch. Instead, she took a deep breath and looked back at the human soldiers around her. "Rest if you can, train if you must. Tomorrow we face them again. And tomorrow we do so together, stronger than ever." Ilara stood silently beside her, feeling the weight of the moment. The battlefield had been chaotic, terrifying, and seemingly hopeless, but tonight hope had returned. Humanity had been tested, and under Ilara's guidance they had risen, not because of her alone, but because of the potential she had awakened in each of them. The soldiers, now settled into makeshift camps, prepared for the next day with a sense of quiet determination. They shared food and water, repaired weapons, and exchanged stories of bravery. Laughter and camaraderie returned to a place that had known only fear and death. And through it all, Ilara moved among them, a constant presence of reassurance and guidance. As the moon climbed high, the princess finally allowed herself a moment of reflection. She had entered the battlefield alone, aware of the risks, knowing that the human's fate rested in part on her actions. And yet, she had seen what they were capable of. She had seen courage, ingenuity, and unity blossom in the most dire circumstances. Ilara's eyes softened as she thought of the future. This victory was only the beginning. The humans had learned an invaluable lesson, that even in the face of overwhelming odds, they could rise, they could adapt, and they could triumph. And she, as an ally, a guide, and a symbol, had helped them see that truth. When dawn arrived, the battlefield looked transformed. The fires had burned low and the smoke had begun to clear. Human lines were organized and strong, prepared for whatever the enemy might send next. Soldiers moved with confidence, their eyes clear, their focus sharp. They no longer fought out of fear or desperation. They fought with purpose, inspired by the courage they had discovered within themselves. Princess Elara stood at the center once more, her silver hair catching the first rays of sunlight. She raised her blade, signaling readiness, not aggression. The humans around her understood. They were ready, because they had learned to believe in themselves, and they were ready to follow her guidance into the challenges ahead. Commander Elara approached her, a quiet smile on her face. "Thank you, Princess. You've given us more than a victory. You've given us a chance to believe in humanity's potential." Elara smiled faintly. "Remember this feeling, Commander. Remember the courage, the unity, and the determination you discovered today. Those qualities are yours, and they will carry you through every trial to come." As the sun rose fully over the horizon, illuminating the battlefield with golden light, the humans felt a renewed sense of hope. The enemy would return, but now they were prepared, not just with weapons or strategy, but with courage, unity, and belief in their own strength. And at the heart of it all stood one alien princess, who had walked into the battlefield alone and turned the tide. Her presence had not only changed the outcome of the battle, but had ignited a spark in humanity that no enemy could extinguish. The legend of that day would be told for generations, a story of courage, leadership, and the extraordinary power that lies within every human when inspired to greatness. And as the humans prepared for the battles ahead, they knew this. With courage, unity, and the guidance of one remarkable figure, they could face any challenge, overcome any obstacle, and emerge victorious. The war was far from over, but hope and humanity had returned stronger than ever. The alien princess entered the battlefield alone and turned the tide.